Welcome to another episode of the 100% podcast with me, your host, Harry Purdy. Today, I'm joined by a returning guest, the very popular Pippa Matthews. On the last episode together, we spoke about menopause, we spoke about women's health and how to generate energy in your midlife. And today, we are going to continue that conversation and expand it ever more into the future and get even more value out of you, Pippa. Welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having me back, Harry. Really excited to be here.
You are very, very welcome. I had so many compliments, comments, especially from my mum, and yeah, she loved the last episode. And a woman who works in the gym, Paula, who came on one of my Goggins runs, loved you. She
Oh,
told all
amazing.
her friends about you and all of those kind of things. So,
Thanks,
yeah,
Harry's
some
mum.
really
Thanks,
good
Harry. Thanks,
feedback
Paula.
from the last episode.
Great. Yeah, I got lots of positive feedback as well. In fact, the hilarious thing was my ex-husband's fiance and her daughters made him listen to it in the car. And and actually, and I said to him, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." He said, "No, it's really good. You were really good." I was like, "Oh, thank you so much."
Yes, it's amazing. And I know like that kind of element of the subject will get spoken about in terms of today's episode and all of the things in terms of your life in general because we spoke about a lot. You gave us a lot of value on the last episode, and there's always an element of the 100% podcast where a lot of my episodes I speak to people about the challenges that they've faced in their life and how they've overcame them to become their own version of 100%, because
Yep.
100% to me isn't one thing. Like in my eyes, it's about what how you've offered things to other people from potentially a situation where you've not been in the best situations yourself. And
Yep.
there's something recently I going straight into the deep stuff. You know me. We're going straight in.
Deep
Uh,
dive. Okay.
yeah, that's right. I listened to Chris Williamson's podcast a fair bit.
Yeah.
Especially if there's guests on there that I'm like, oh, do you know what? That resonate or they've got big influence in the game that we're in of coaching, of personal development, of wanting to be a better version of yourself, because that's what 100% to me is kind of around. And recently, the most recent one he's done is with Tony Robbins, the most
Yes.
the most well-known guru, that's if we want to use that word, in
Yeah.
the personal development world. And he's doing this 3 day event. But he literally said something that is probably one of the most basic elements of personal development and mindset thinking that you can get told. But every now and again, it's just really nice to get that reminder of that you have two ways of looking at life. You have a way of looking at life where everything is bad and everything is negative and everything happens to you. And then you have an element of looking at life where events that may not be necessarily deemed negative, you can put a positive spin on. And where I'm going with that story is that this podcast kind of gives everybody the opportunity to speak about that. And you've got a story that you tell your clients when it comes to that situation as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because there's a whole lot about toxic positivity on socials at the moment and about, being positive for the sake of it. And I know certainly from the work that I've done that my coach or our coach Paul Moore encouraged me to do was a lot of the work around with Byron Katie is about loving what is and accepting it rather than fighting against it. And the story that I tell my clients is that I have two ways that I could view my life. I could view my life in the way that my mum died when I was 27 after a short illness. I was an only child. I am an only child.
Mm.
Um, I threw myself into work, had all of the stresses that came with that, with a big career. My ex-husband almost died in a motorbike accident, and then we had quite a long time of him rehabilitating, which actually it cost both of us an awful lot. Um, I could frame it in terms of the fact that I had a really close friend that died of breast cancer. I could talk about loss until all the cows come home. I can say that my marriage failed. I can, after 23 years, I could say that I've had a broken engagement. I could say that I've had financial chaos. I could say that I've lost my business a few times. And I could say that I gave up my actual corporate career. However, all of that is coming from a place of scarcity and lack. And obviously, my father passed away after I cared for him for a while. And if I look at my life from a place of scarcity and lack, that is negating all of those experiences, but all of those people, even if they're not in my life anymore, that they all gave me, and all of the experience it gave me and all the learnings it gave me. So I choose to see the gifts in everything. I would not be the woman that I am today if all of those experiences hadn't happened to me.
Mm.
I would not be the resilient person. And resilience isn't about just putting a positive spin on things. Resilience is about when something happens, it's about being able to process it. It's about being able to accept that it's happened, but not get stuck on it. It's
Yeah.
about being able to take the lessons, the emotional battering sometimes, and turn it into, right, okay, how do I move forward from this? Because for me, life is always about moving forward. I have a bit of a thing that I always say I've reinvented myself more times than Madonna. And I think I probably said that on the last podcast.
Yeah, nice.
But I'm 54 in March. And when you think of kind of where I've been, I actually think, part of me feels like I'm only just getting started. And it is viewing that, yeah, I got to be with both of my parents in the last weeks of their life and support them and help them and care for them. I got to be there when they both passed away. That's lucky, I think, for me, that I was able to be there. That was a real gift so that they weren't alone. I was able to have the mental, physical, and financial resources to support my ex-husband through his when he had his motorbike accident. That cost me quite a lot and him an awful lot, but he didn't lose his right leg because I had the tenacity and, frankly, the balls to argue with doctors and to stand up and to advocate for him. Um, and he still poodles around on that leg now when we're like 17, 18 years later. And that was hugely challenging. The challenges that I faced in my career, the stress, the battles, the arguments, all the difficult issues you have around people. That's actually helped me become a coach because of the more people I've come across. The issues around my dad and caring for him, that was hard. That's probably the hardest thing I've had to do was to give up everything just to care for my dad. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat because that taught me a lot about me. It taught me a lot about him. And it taught me a lot about what other people are going through that are in that situation. Um, Financial chaos is always a good lesson because
Mm.
that teaches you to look after and be sensible with things and not to bury your head in the sand. Um, and relationships are always tricky. And when they end, I think it's kind of right. Does this person still have a place in my life? So, for example, my ex-husband, I see him and his fiance fairly regularly. They came for Sunday dinner before Christmas. And we're friends. We have a long history together and we're friends. And it's actually saying, right, okay, this person's either coming with me on my journey, but in a different way, or actually they probably just need to stay where they are.
Mm.
And it is about all of that. And sometimes when you look at what you've gone through, this time last year, for example, I'll have been in my house, this lovely little house I bought a year on Saturday, a year since I moved in, the 18th of January. And this time last year, I was in an Airbnb. I didn't find out we were completing until today, 2 days before we completed
Oh,
last
wow.
I didn't find out that I was still under a gynae cancer scare, waiting for results from Bedford Hospital. I was pretty low because I'd been in an Airbnb all Christmas. I'd been then staying in Derbyshire because I had to move out of my old family home. It was a tough time. However, here we are 12 months on, and the growth that I've had in the last 12 months, when you do show up for yourself every day and you do make that decision to keep pushing forward is huge. I've grown more this last 12 months than I think I have, well, I can't even imagine in the last 10 years, probably. And I've gone through a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I completely resonate with what you're saying as well, because every time I speak about the journey of me, this episode is about you, but every time I think back to the lowest points of my life, the biggest challenges, the things I've had to overcome in the last 5 years, from a weight loss perspective to like relationship challenges myself or mental health challenges myself that
Yeah.
I've overcome and learnt ways of having to deal with and looking after myself better is essentially what it comes down to. But when you look at me now and the regeneration of Harry Purdy and the regrowth, the rebirth, the podcast wouldn't exist. The people that have been on coaching journeys because of me wouldn't exist. The
Back to that.
events that I've held wouldn't exist. The football teams that I've been involved of wouldn't have had the fundraising efforts and
Yeah.
all of those kind of things because of well, because I wouldn't have gone through challenge. But then the one thing that do want you to touch on that you did speak about at the start of um that little like passage of speech was that you said about the challenges in the past and not getting stuck. And one of the things that breaks me and I find challenging is when you have conversations with like clients, friends, family members, and they're stuck on a moment in the past. How is it that some people are able to dust down, move forward, make progress, and some people genuinely just stay where they are?
I think I stayed where I was for quite a few years, I'm going to be honest. But I think it's what you expose yourself to in terms of your peer group, in terms of who you hang around with, who you listen to, what you choose to interact with. And for me, I can tell you what the tipping point was. It was there's an American lady called Rachel Hollis. She's an author. She's got her own podcast. She does a whole lot in the kind of the self-development area. And she wrote a book called Girl Wash Your Face, which if ladies, if you're listening to this and you are in your anything from your late 30s upwards, go read that book because it breaks down the lies that particularly women tell ourselves and that keep us stuck in the past. But you know, it goes through societal expectations, a bit about the patriarchy, a little bit about how we're supposed to be as women. And kind of for me, I realized that I was carrying around so much baggage. You know, there's quite a few memes around, you know, with people carrying loads and loads and loads of stuff. And it doesn't matter what the thing is that you're carrying. So, for example, I have a chapstick here, or a Burt's Bees. If I was carrying this around up here, right in the front of my vision for like 10 minutes, it wouldn't affect me. But if I was to try and carry that around all the time with that level of attention and keep coming back to it, my hand would spasm and then my arm would get tired and then my shoulder would seize up. And then I kind of like using the other arm to hold it up. And then before you know it, all your energy is going into holding on to that one thing and it becomes part of your identity. And you have to make that choice to put it down. And it's hard because it becomes your identity. If you had a bad breakup 10, 15 years ago, you had a divorce, somebody let you down, that will, if you're not careful, skew how you approach every single interaction or relationship in your life. And if you don't want it to skew that and you want to be more open, you have to do the work. You have to decide that happened to past me. Today, me is choosing not to take that baggage forward with me. And
It's
metaphorically, literally, just put it down, put it down.
I have a really good story on that situation as well, which is really recent. And I'd like to say now, you ask my closest friends, they've seen a journey from somebody that was quite a het up man, or young man, to somebody that's like probably too laid back now, which like is yeah, which is a like a contrast really. But occasionally you catch yourself and you're like, oh, I didn't quite like that version of me that popped out there.
Absolutely.
And there was a situation last year at one of Paul's events, and I misheard something somebody said to me that essentially I thought that they'd insulted my size, and I reacted really badly, like in a millisecond, was like, what the fuck was that? Like, and I was like, okay, like, where did that came from? Apologize for the situation, whatever, because I'd misheard essentially
Yeah.
what I wouldn't have minded the fact that I'd stuck up for myself, but it was the
Yeah.
way that I'd reacted. And then I was like, okay, that's an area of my life that maybe like the side of my life that was so far away in the past now that I'd almost just put into a drawer and left. The comments about being overweight, like being a young man on a football pitch and being called fat, and those things add up and they do leave a little bit of, I'm not going to use the word like leave a scar or whatever, but there's certainly some unfinished business there with my own mindset that
Yeah.
I'm not that person anymore. I'm clearly not overweight. I'm clearly not obese. Like, and if somebody was to say that in passing, you'd just laugh because like it's absolute nonsense. So I did the work, and I think it's so important to just catch those moments of yourself. It could be something big like that, a little bit of a red flag, like maybe, oh, hold on, there's some unfinished business with some mindset there, or it could be you're driving down the road and somebody pulls out in front of you and you explode into this great big gorilla in the car. And that's your moment where you haven't been like that for a while, that you go, oh, hold on a minute. Like, why am I so pent up? Why am I stressed? What am I carrying? What am I not
Yeah.
feeling? And what do I need to do to look after myself better? And those are the moments that maybe take a step back and almost like backwards rewind what's happened and why you're feeling the way you are.
It's absolutely that. I had a similar situation last summer. So I spoke briefly about my ex-husband's motorbike accident, but he needed some surgery on his other leg last summer because he'd had another fall. And he needed his basically his quad muscle reattaching.
Ooh.
Anyway, cut a long story short, I knew he'd probably have to have this surgery. And he rang me to tell me that he got the date for the surgery. And I was driving at the time. I answered the call, listened safely, obviously do. And as he told me, I was like, okay, all right, okay, well, I'm driving now. I'll give you a call later. And I hung up and I felt this tidal wave come over me like I was going to be sick. A
Mm.
real visceral physical response. And I had to pull over by the side of the road. I got out of the car and I threw up.
Oh, wow.
Literally threw up. Now, I absolutely thought I had dealt with everything from that accident, all of the aftermath and the issues. But obviously I hadn't. I was a gibbering wreck. And a lovely young lad stopped and went and got me some water and got me back into my car, calmed me down, said he'd phoned somebody, but I was fine. I came home and I reached out after one of a masterclass in Inner Circle, which Gary Lane did, one of the other guys that's in Alliance. Um, and he works with kind of where you feel trauma in your body, etc. And it was obvious that I had some unresolved issues around Ian's accident, that this whole the thought of him going into surgery again, even though we are separate, happily divorced, that just brought up a whole load of stuff for me, that I needed to work on that kind of trauma response. So I did the work and I can talk about it quite happily now. Ian went for his surgery, he was absolutely fine.
When,
Um,
just so people are aware, Pippa, I didn't mean to butt in then, but when you say the work, just for listeners' perspective and knowledge, what do you mean by the work?
So for me, the work combines on any kind of issue that I've got. It combines a whole load of things. It's a bit of the Byron Katie stuff, but for me, it's journaling. It's right, getting it out of my head. What's happening here? How am I feeling? A lot of the time when I was younger or I'd gone through difficult stuff, I couldn't tell you how I felt about it. It's very
Mm.
difficult to talk about, to put a name on it. It would just be that I feel angry, and that was probably it. I would say also I was quite an angry person. I'm an Aries, so we come with a real side side of it. Um, but a lot of the time is understanding what am I feeling. That drilling down into that, a lot of it is journaling, a lot of it is asking for help. I might see a therapist occasionally. And this time I actually reached out to Gary and I had a couple of sessions with Gary online and we talked about where we hold trauma in your body and how to focus and to feel that kind of get that take its power away, if that makes sense, and how to dissipate it in the body. But for me, when something pops up like that, it isn't something old me that had a need to be perfect for everybody and that had a need to put kind of walls up to keep everything in, would have squashed all of that down and ignored it. I wouldn't have told anybody. I would have been embarrassed. New me is, well, actually, there's something come up there. I need to work on it. I need to get that sorted out. I need to figure out what that is. I'm curious about it. Favorite Walt Whitman quote coming up again, because I'm a Ted Lasso addict as well, is being curious, not judgmental, and not just about other people, but about yourself. It's like, actually, I'm not going to judge myself that I might have overeaten today. I'm not going to judge myself that I drank too much last night. I'm going to judge myself that I went off the handle, but I'm going to be curious about why I did it.
Yeah, it's again, we're hitting a lot of similarities here. One thing that I've noticed recently, especially, and I'm an advocate for, I completely love the fact that January brings this whole new fresh perspective for the general pop, right? Most people have said that they want to change something for the better. 99 times out of 100,
Yeah.
that's because they want to change themselves for the better. And that's admirable, right? To notice a weakness and then wanting to change. But then there's also the element of that that brings, all right, but what happens if after 2 weeks you don't do the
Yeah.
things that you said you would do? And normally, when it comes to confidence and self-esteem, if we say that we're going to do something, and as well if we've told somebody that we're going to like achieve this thing or lose some weight or take on this running like new me, new year, new me kind of vibe, if we say we're going to do it and we don't do it, it can be a little chip away of your confidence, whether you like it or not, because
Yeah,
confidence can be about the promises that you keep to yourself and the ones that you break. Break promises to yourself, probably going to lose some confidence and self-esteem. Keep
yeah,
promises to yourself, you're going to build that confidence and get the rewards because you've kept that promise. And I'm guilty of it too. Saying even though I've done like the journey's continuing and there's a long part of that journey done and I've proven to myself I can do some hard shit, when I don't quite hit the grade that I set for myself,
yeah.
I'm harsh on myself. Like,
Of course
and
you are.
I
I'm
know that
human.
I am, and it's something still that I'm like, why am I'll catch myself sometimes. I'm like, why are you being so damn critical for this? Look what you've done. Like, just chill out. But it's so hard. When you cross that barrier, and it is almost the negative side to the positive side of personal development, when you've achieved something, there's always a sense of wanting more and then what's next and how can I be better? And there's that element that kind of brings that, okay, well, you at some point you have to be critical of yourself to get more, right? And that's kind of what
Yeah.
comes as part of it.
Kind of the thing that I work with a lot of women in midlife, that's my thing. And women tend to, I'm generalizing, ladies, forgive me. A lot of the time we have lower self-esteem to start with. By the time that if you've raised kids or you've gone through kind of life, you get to often your 40s and you kind of think, who am I? You don't breaking promises to yourself becomes the norm because you keep them to everybody else. You keep them to your partner, your children, your parents, your sister, your friends, your boss, everybody else. But we tend to not keep promises to ourselves. And what I work with clients on, and what's a massive part of my program, is being, and I got this, there's this phrase that Emma Story Gordon uses called imperfect action. I call it gloriously messy imperfect action. Is that you can do, rather than being all or nothing and having that dichotomous thinking, it's something, all or something. And it's making sure that there's that phrase, don't miss twice, but it is making sure that you just show up for yourself every day. So, for example, if you're in one of my programs and we've got a check in, even if you think you've had the worst day in the history of the world ever, I want you to show up and I want you to tell me about it and I want you to pull a lesson out of it. And then tell me one thing that you're going to do to make tomorrow a little bit easier on yourself.
Yeah, I like that.
When we work at consistently 70 to 80% effort towards our goals consistently, that will outpace 2 to 3 weeks of 100% every damn time. And whether that's weight loss, getting fitter, working on your mindset, learning a new skill, taking a course, just showing up consistently, even if it's not perfect. And this is the biggest thing I would say I'm a recovering perfectionist. You know, I really am. I really, really am. Because you think if you can't do it properly, you won't do it at all. What's the point? If I can't go to the gym for the 3 sessions that I said I need to do this week, and I know I'm only going to get one in, there's no point going for that one. Well,
Yeah,
actually, that one is the really, really important one because then you are doing what you can
yeah,
and you're still building that evidence that you can show up for yourself even when circumstances aren't amazing. So that's probably for me, that's one of the biggest things that I work with people is showing up for yourself and being okay with not being perfect. It's huge, huge.
yeah. Because that evidence thing is where the confidence grows from, isn't it? Yeah,
Absolutely. Evidence and data, as you know, I mean, we do this, don't we, every week with our coach. You build up the evidence and the data that you can do hard things, or you can actually do things that are a bit unsexy or a bit unexciting, but you can do them kind of on repeat because actually you know that if you keep showing up, you will get there.
mm,
And it's not about being slower. It's not about, going from A to B any quicker. It's not about, oh, I did Couch to 5K and it should have taken me 8 weeks. And, but I gave up after 5 because I was knackered. Well, actually, then spread it out. It doesn't matter if it takes 16 weeks
no, no.
because it's your journey. It's not anyone else's. But still, at the end of 16 weeks, you can still run 5K without stopping.
100%. Completely agree. So we spoke about like well, I alluded to the new year, new me, and in January, one of the things that not does come up a lot in conversations with people about how they want to change, even if it's not just for the whole year, it's for that month, is dry Jan. And
Yes.
especially after the binge-worthy time of the year that is Christmas, I think it can have a double impact on people, right? People are already looking for something to achieve in the new year, and
Yeah.
then they get drunk or
Yeah.
overindulge in alcohol for 7 days out of 10 over the Christmas
Yeah.
period. And then dry January comes around. And you haven't drank now for a long period of time, have you, Pippa?
So I'm actually 31 months alcohol free tomorrow.
Boom.
So yeah, and I think for me, it's interesting because I'm getting asked a lot about that this month. A lot about, how do you do it? How do you go through it? How do you navigate social situations? Um, I think it's different for everybody. But the thing that I can tell anybody that's listening that's doing dry January now is to keep going because it is worth it.
Mm.
And I know some people do dry January and then they carry on. Some people can't wait to crack a glass of something on the 1st of Feb or at midnight past the 31st of January. I think our society's whole relationship with alcohol is completely screwed up because it is the only poison or toxin that is openly encouraged by by pretty much everybody. You wouldn't snort a line of coke in front of your kids. You wouldn't, well, you'd hope you wouldn't. Um, Most people don't smoke around their children if they smoke anymore. And yet, things like alcohol, we do it openly and encourage other people to be open about it. I gave up for good after having given up many times before for like either a month, 3 months. I think I did a 4 month stint once when I was doing body coach plan. I'd quite happily go for a couple of weeks in the run up to this, me giving up completely without having a drink. But actually, when my dad got really sick, it was when the injectables turned up. And I realised that although I wasn't in charge of his morphine dosage, I was in charge of dispensing it. And that's quite a big responsibility. And having to be the night carer for my dad and in charge of all of his meds and in charge of ringing for a doctor if he needed one or the palliative nurse overnight, needing to be able to drive at any moment if I needed to go and get additional medication for him. All of those things, it kind of became a no-brainer from that perspective. What I wasn't expecting, though, was that I'd carry it on. But that was a revelation to me. So my dad, we found out that he was terminal on the 16th of June, 2022. And originally they said he got about a year left. And then our GP popped round on that day and said he'd be lucky if he got 3 to 5 months. And at that point, everything stopped in my world. Everything was a bit on hold, but that was it. I just put everything else on hold to focus on dad, including giving up alcohol. And he passed away towards the end of October that year. And hilariously and weirdly, and this shows you how fucked up our society is in some respects, is that a lot of the first questions that a few people asked me after expressing their regrets were, "Oh, at least you can have a glass of wine now." And I was just like, "What?"
Mm.
I'm in absolute financial chaos. Um, my relationship broke up while the last week of my dad's life. I'm on my own. I'm in absolute financial chaos. I've got an estate to sort out. I've got a house to sell. I've got a business to rebuild. And you think it'd be a really good idea for me to start drinking again?
It is such a I think it is. It's a warped perspective, and again, no disrespect to anybody. Like I get it. I get that it's
I
almost a
really
pat.
do.
Yeah, it's a it's a bad habit ingrained disguised as a good one. And
Yeah.
again, similarities today, Pippa. I have done 6 months. I've done 5 months, and then a stag do will come up or a wedding will come up, and then it goes. And last year I did 5 months, went on my friend's stag do in Lisbon, and then the rest of the year was like scattergun approach with booze. It'd be like I wouldn't have it for 3 weeks, and then another thing would come up, and then I'd drink again, and then it would go 6 weeks without a drink, and then I'd drink.
Yeah,
And one thing that I've found, there was like the residual pattern, the one that kept coming up, was that every time I drank heavy and it left an impact of energy. I do feel
yeah,
more anxious when I've drank. I do feel like worse in terms of my mood when I've drank. At no point was I like, oh, that was so worth it. Don't,
exactly
don't,
that.
don't get me wrong. The days, so like my cousin's wedding on New Year's Eve was amazing, like incredible. However, the impact of alcohol for 3 days after wasn't incredible. My cousin's stag do in, sorry, my best friend's stag do in Lisbon,
Yeah,
incredible, amazing city, amazing experience, amazing time with friends. At no point in no sentences there did I say all of that alcohol I drank was unreal, and the knock-on
yeah,
effect of that was unreal. It was the city, it was my friends, it was what I was doing, right? Not the drink. So
yeah.
this year, I am making this public. I'm going to announce like my top 3 goals as a post this week anyway. But going a year this year is like it's happening. But
Brilliant.
yeah,
Good for you. I think I don't have a problem. So I have friends that drink. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem if they drink around me. I don't have a problem if people come into my house and choosing to bring a drink with them. I always say I don't see the point in keeping alcohol in the house. I just don't. I
yeah,
have. There's been a bottle of red wine actually in the cupboard downstairs since I moved in because my neighbour popped it over the fence with a welcome to the street card, and it's still sat there, and
yeah,
it's a
not touched
bottle of
it.
red. And that used to be my favourite, but it doesn't bother me. So I haven't got an issue around it. I think that the thing for me is. Sometimes what I do, who I hang around with has changed. And I've realized that I've very little tolerance for people when they've had more than 1 to 2 drinks
Mm.
because they repeat themselves. And, in some cases, if they've had multiple drinks, they start slurring and frankly, they're boring. And it sounds really brutal, but they are. And it's kind of, for me, I think back to, some of the amazing nights out we had when I was working for James in the academy and some of the meetups that we had, I can't remember half of them. I can't remember half of them. I made some bad decisions, like questionable choices about life. Um, and really and truly, I probably put myself in danger a fair few times. And that isn't because if you asked anybody, have I got a problem with alcohol? No, the problem is that once I was in the zone and I was out on a night out, I'd have something to take the edge off. Like I'd have a double gin getting ready, nice double gin and tonic or something like that, or a couple of glasses of Prosecco with the girls, because I have a bit of social anxiety, which I know a lot of people will find hard to believe that I'm walking into a room full of people. I'm like, okay, okay. And I kind of use that to get over it. And then people in James's Academy were lovely, so people would just buy drinks. And I just end up really drunk. Women can't metabolize alcohol in the same way as men. We're not as efficient at it. We hold on to it for longer because we've got bigger fat stores in our body or higher fat stores in our body. We can't process it as quickly. Um, and it's just not a good idea. And actually, when I had a conversation, I've got one of my best friends is an OBGYN gynecologist, and she said to me last year, and it really brought it home to me. She said, "Well, we were talking about cancer because I had a gynae cancer scare last year," and she said, "Well, you've already negated your biggest risk for breast cancer." I said, "What? How have I done that then?" She said, "You don't drink." Should you don't drink. Should alcohol is people think that, they go, oh, you're smoking because of lung cancer and esophageal cancer and all these other things. She said, but alcohol, she said, for kind of feminine based cancers, but also for all cancers. Huge, huge, huge factor. Huge factor. And that really kind of brought it home to me in the fact that, wow. And I see that as something that I've done for myself to look after me. I see I see it's a bonus. In fact, the one thing that I'm probably the proudest of at the moment in my world is the fact that of everything that I've dealt with in the last 3 years since my dad has been gone and I've had to sell my family home, I've rebuilt my business, I've got out of financial chaos, I've a relationship that I thought was actually going to be the one has ended. That no time in that whole process have I thought that having a drink would improve that process. The thing that gets me is that when I do feel like, oh, I wish I could have a glass of red, it's when I'm flat as a pancake. It's when I'm upset. It's when I'm down. It's when I'm low. And it's when I haven't planned up in enough good stuff, enough connection with friends, enough things that excite me and interest me. It's when I'm not busy enough.
Mm.
And I think with a lot of people, the automatic thing and lockdown and the pandemic really kicked this for loads of people, is if you've had a tough day, you'll automatically, we know your brain will divert to the nearest path of least resistance. That if you've had a tough day and you're used to coming in and having a glass of wine to unwind, then that's a tough habit to break. Because every time you then feel flat or challenged or stressed, you think that's the answer. Whereas actually it won't be, because it'll disrupt your sleep that night. It will send your blood sugars haywire. You'll feel a bit anxious and foggy the next morning. Any menopausal symptoms that women have got, and I mean any, alcohol will not help them. It will make them worse.
Mm.
Makes your brain fog worse. It makes your cognitive function worse. Like vasomotor symptoms like hot flushes, night sweats, prickly skin, itchy skin, makes all of those worse.
It's a bit of it's a catch-22, isn't it? Because we've all had, I mean, I'm guilty of it, especially when I was not at my happiest, come home on a Saturday evening, be on my own, all my mates are out with their missus, whatever, and obviously you're feeling in that low place, a bit overweight, very overweight. I'll just have a couple of beers while I play the Xbox or whatever.
Yeah.
And that low energy that you think is going to be cured in a really bizarre way by that beer is just then emphasized for the next day. And then you feel worse. And I think
Yep.
that's probably the biggest. I'd like to say that I'm an over average performer now, like verging on the high performer, right? I like to stick my neck out there. I put myself on the line. I've done my endurance events and I want to impact more people this year. That's the goal. And the question that I asked myself when I was setting my goals this year is alcohol going to slow me down or speed me up?
Yeah, exactly that.
And the answer is it's going to slow me down. So there's no space for it anymore.
I think that's yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, for me, I don't have room for that in my life. I feel as a single female, I love the fact now that it doesn't even occur to me, oh, how am I going to get back? Do I need to book a taxi? Am I going to be okay? Will someone get? Because I just drive myself
Yeah.
anywhere that I want to go. If I come back going to London for dinner with friends, I'm stone cold sober coming back on the train. I've got all of my faculties available to me to keep myself safe and to get myself home safe. I don't make really bad decisions anymore when I've had too much to drink. I think it's really interesting, but for people that are doing dry January, there's two things that I would say to you that massively helped me to start with. One, if you are that person that feels the need for a bottle of wine on a Friday night and a takeaway and Netflix. So the first thing is Janie Lee Grace, who is a sober coach, but she used to be on Righty in the afternoon because you're younger than me, Harry. So Steve Wright in the afternoon used to be a thing on Radio 1 and 2. I
I
am
know
that old.
I know Steve, yeah, I know
Yeah.
Steve Wright. Yeah.
But she talks about don't try to replace the habit and the ingredient, replace the ingredient. So if you have a habit on a Friday or you would come in from work and you would make a gin and tonic, then make yourself either a mocktail, an alcohol-free gin and tonic, something fancy in a glass that is alcohol-free. Get yourself an alcohol-free beer ready for the fridge, but replace the ingredient first rather than trying to do the habit and the ingredient at the same time, because that's hard. And then the second thing is to kind of change up that habit when you've kind of got a handle on the ingredients. So if you know that your kind of trigger is on a Friday night, that you are going to either get a takeaway or going to go out for dinner with the other half, and you normally would share a bottle of wine or something like that, then change that up. Don't go out for dinner to the same place. Maybe go bowling, go play crazy golf, book to go to the cinema, book somewhere that you wouldn't normally associate with alcohol.
Mm.
Do something different and kind of change that environment as well. But if you're at home, change the ingredient. What I always have in my fridge, you will always find a bottle of Naughty, which is Noughty by Thompson and Scott, which is alcohol-free fizz. It's much nicer than Prosecco, ladies, much, much nicer. You'll always find alcohol-free beer, and I've got alcohol-free gin and just normal tonic in my cupboard. So that if I do feel the need for a drink, or if I do kind of get the urge, there's something there that then will just stop me fixating on it straight away.
When I've been in my phases of the 6 months, 5 months periods where I have, and I've gone to watch Chelsea, for example, with my mates, I'll normally drive because I'm on this non-alcohol period of time. But at the same time as well, having like three, four non-alcohol beers, it gives you that weird placebo effect that you are drinking with your pals anyway, I
Yeah.
think. And oh, obviously it's a placebo. There's nothing in that that can give you that feeling. But again, when I was speaking about the stag do, it wasn't the romance of alcohol that made those trips amazing. It was the situation. And it's the same
And
when I flip that to the football as well. I'm sat there with my pals going to watch the team that I love with like friends that I respect and we have a great time together. And alcohol, like, yeah, of course it makes you feel looser, it makes you feel more confident. It like I don't know, gets you a little bit looser to go to the football, but actually when it's the social situation, you can get the same feeling just on a 0% beer. And it's
yeah,
something that I've overcame. The one that I know that I've got a stag do, they're going to Albufeira in August. That's the challenge, the biggest challenge that's on my mind at the moment. I think the rest of the year is going to be easy because I've tackled parties, I've tackled football matches. I've tackled events
yeah,
where I've gone and I've said I'm not drinking. That's fine. The one thing that I love as well is that not only for a woman does it make your night out safer and leaves things in more control. Believe it or not, I do actually quite like my own company. Being as social as I am, like
me
there's
too.
nothing better than I like than to just do something that I enjoy on my own with no distraction and no need to be like in that social mode. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like on point all the time is what I'm trying to say. And when you when you don't drink and you drive, and you do get to that stage of the night where everyone's repeating the same stories you've heard 5 times, and
Yeah.
you can't make sense of anything that anybody's saying, and they all think that the songs coming on are amazing, and you're like, fuck me, this is awful. You can go
Yes.
home and just literally take things into your own control and drive away and go and
And
enjoy that company on your own, and it's
and
amazing.
someone said to me, God, you're so boring these days. I said, am I really though? Am
Mm.
I? And he said, well, yeah, you wanted to go home at 10 o'clock. You went home at 10 o'clock. And then I sent you a text saying, where have you gone? And you said, oh, I'm sitting in bed cuddling Stanley, drinking a cup of sleepy tea and reading my book. I said, yeah, but I was happy doing that.
Yeah.
And what happened to you? He said, oh, I can't even remember how much he said he spent. I spent this much money. Apparently, I had a kebab. I've got no clue. He said, and then I woke up on my mate's sofa, pissed the missus off because I'd fallen asleep at my mate's and she didn't know where I was and I'd lost my phone. Fortunately, someone else picked it up. But, it's all of this kind of chaos around it. And I get that, for a lot of people, it isn't that. But for a lot of people, if you are, particularly if you're female, if you are drinking more than a bottle of wine across a week, then that's not great. It's not great for any of your health markers. And yeah, I think I don't want to get preachy about it, but anyone that's listening, there is a better way.
There is a better way for sure.
There
And in
is.
terms of the other New Year, New Me kind of language that happens in January, there's obviously the weight loss element as well. And you've
Yeah,
created a new program that can
I
help
have.
people tackle all of the bad habits and stuff that may have been implemented in the past from X diets, X fads, X experiences, bad mindset around food, and all of those kind of things that you're trying to solve the element of the fitness industry that everybody's got an issue with.
Yeah, so for me, I haven't fat loss coached or just fat loss coached probably since 2020. And I started off just literally nutrition and fat loss coaching. That was what I did. Um, but then I pivoted into mindset coaching and then pivoted into specifically for women. And obviously, there are a lot of women that always will want to maybe shed a little bit of timber or get fitter or change how they feel about themselves or recomposition their body. And for me, it's kind of like it was a no-brainer to create synergy. It's the missing link because if you work on your mindset and you get clear on your values and what's important to you. And then you interlace that in with your goals around fitness and nutrition. And then you intersperse that with the kind of 7 or 8 out of 10 method of being persistent instead of maybe consistent and just showing up for yourself. And then interlace that with nutrition know-how and getting a handle on how you eat, which is particularly important for women in midlife, hugely important. I think when all of those elements come together, that's when the magic starts to happen. And so synergy is like a kickstart. It's a 6 week kickstart, and then obviously you can follow on from that. And we do check-ins, daily accountability in group. There's a fortnightly check-in online with me, a little supporting Facebook group, and then I've got a portal full of information and videos and resources online that members get into as well. So I'm excited about it. Is that we're partway through the beta test at the moment, and it's going really, really well. So yeah, I'll be opening up the waiting list for spaces for that for February start shortly.
I think as well, one thing that I've found, especially with 100% coaching, and obviously my coaching isn't solely around fat loss, but
Yeah.
a lot of my clients come to me because they've seen my journey and they know what I've done with regards to my own fat loss and how I've helped other people. But one of the things I don't believe people can understand unless it's almost shown to them on a nice shiny platter is that if they've had challenges and taken on fad diets before, and it's led to them dropping a stone and then putting it back on and then doing the same thing on a repetitive pattern, or not got any results whatsoever, there is some element of mindset. I'm not going to say problem, but mindset challenge there that needs to be tackled. And I do think that when it comes to the science of fat loss, it is burn more energy than what your body needs and you will lose weight. And if it was that simple, everyone would fucking do it, right? Like,
Absolutely that.
but yeah, but it isn't. There are challenges, there are things that happen in life, there are bad habits that you've picked up from old diets in the past that you think are still going to benefit you moving forward, and they're not. And one thing that I think is always, and I know it's all about like the conversations you have with people before they come into your program to get that awareness and where they're at. But I don't think people understand in general, I am generalizing, that there is a mindset issue rather than a diet issue 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and I think it's, anyone that's an anyone, but in my experience, anyone, and I put myself in this as well, anyone can diet hard for a month, really hard for a month, shift a stone, can't keep it off though. Most diets fail. And the issue is that we try and do something that doesn't fit into our lives. We try and do something that requires us to exclude ourselves perhaps from social situations, requires us to eat different things from the rest of our family at night, requires us to rip out everything that we know and replace it with something. So of course it's not sustainable. Whereas pretty much the way that I come from is tweaking a long time.
Mm,
So one of the biggest things that I kind of really work on is getting people to get their fruit, veg, and fibre up hugely. Protein is a given, but fruit, veg, and fibre. Fibre is so important for gut health, which is important for brain health, which is important for mood. As you know, it's also so important for your digestive tract and for preventing things like bowel cancer, etc. But if you go from like only getting less than 10 grams of fibre a day to then trying to suddenly get 30 grams of fibre a day, you're going to get into fairly big gastric distress. You're going to be bloated, you're going to be windy, you're going to be uncomfortable, your toilet isn't going to know what's hit it. And so that's not sustainable at all because you'll start it and then you'll think, oh my God, I can't do that. This is awful, you know. Whereas actually, it's kind of like, right, okay, cool. Where are you at right now? Meet yourself where you're at. So, fibre as an example, if you're at 14 grams of fibre a day, great. Let's over the course of the next 2 weeks try and get that to 20.
mm,
Then let's stick with maintaining 20 for a couple of weeks. Then let's try and push it to 25. And the same process repeats. Same with everything you're trying to do. If getting to the gym 3 to 4 times a week seems impossible, brilliant. I want you to go twice. Twice. Anything you want to do. Yeah, we all know weights is the gold standard, but anything you want to do that will get you to work out and get a bit sweaty and exert yourself twice a week. I don't care if it's a dance class, Zumba, whatever it is, you do it.
Mm,
Because what you're doing is you're showing people that it's possible, that for them they can do whatever. You meet them where they are. And the partnership of it with when you get into mindset stuff, a lot of it is emotional regulation. It's learning to get out of a stressed state. It's learning to calm yourself down without food or alcohol, whatever your kind of poison of choice is. It's learning to regulate yourself, whether that be with breath work, meditation, yoga, Pilates. For some people, it might just be a walk in nature. It might just be playing with their kids in the park. It might just be cuddling their dog. And it's your relationship with food and your weight is so much more than just got what goes in your mouth.
mm.
I think that's huge, and we don't give enough importance to it. I know that we do, but the industry as a whole just really doesn't. I don't want to see, when you see a 6 week challenge, an 8 week fat loss challenge, a bikini body challenge, I literally just want to punch them straight in the face. Because it's not going to help anybody. It might help you in your 20s, but certainly when you get to your 40s and you've got perimenopause symptoms, you might have teenage kids, you're trying to care for your children, your partner's away a lot with work and they have a stressful job, you have a stressful job, that is not going to help you. It's not
Yeah.
going to help you at all, not long
And
term.
I think as well, the thing that's important, if any of that's resonating with somebody and they've tried to bite off more than they can chew in some ways, and there's no pun intended there, is that when you do break things down from going from that all or nothing approach to then baby habits, baby steps to get long-term results, is just that reminder and that emphasis to say, look, like we as coaches who are looking after you for the long haul, I want to make you aware that because you're so used to dropping a stone in 2.5 weeks and then putting it back on, when we go to these baby steps, you're not going to see those dramatic shifts, but you are going to see shifts eventually and changes eventually and feel way better than what you did the last time that you dropped that amount of weight as well.
And that's quite a hard sell because we are society at the moment, we're all about instant gratification, aren't
Oh,
we?
it's unreal.
The reels, if it's not, it doesn't catch you in the first 5 to 10 seconds, then you're gone. You keep scrolling. We can have, if you don't want to cook, great. You've got most of the countries covered by Uber Eats or Deliveroo or Just Eat. You can get something delivered. We convenience food. We don't have to wait to see the show next week on TV now. We can binge watch the entire series. And it's the same with everything in life. If you want something to last and you want something to stick, you have to do the change gradually and consistently with support. So actually, if people come to me, and I do one-to-one coaching as well, and say, I had a lady last year that she had a wedding to go to. She only had 6 weeks, and she wanted to lose 2 dress sizes in 6 weeks. Um, and I said, I can't do that. I'm not the coach for you. I've got I absolutely could get you to lose definitely a dress size, if not slightly more in 6 weeks, but I'm not the coach that's going to do that for you. I've done that before. It won't help you. Um, and she got quite cross with me, quite cross with me because I turned her down. She went off to another coach who took her as a client and who pretty much almost semi-starved her to death for the 6 weeks before the wedding. So she did lose a dress size and a half. And within 6 weeks after said wedding, she'd put a dress size back on because
Like, yeah.
she learnt nothing. And what does that do for you as a woman? So every time you crash diet, you get a level of metabolic adaptation. You can't break your metabolism, but your body's really clever. So when you get smaller and it realizes you need less calories to function, obviously it adapts. So the next time you go to lose weight, that number of calories that you lost weight on magically now doesn't work because actually your body says, hang on a minute, but we were smaller. I need less calories now. And it just gets in this vicious circle. And I'd really, really, really love to see it stop.
It's a challenge that it sounds like you and I, Pippa, are aiming to get to the bottom of, but it's hard work, especially when, like you say, you do see those posts that are primarily aimed for that crash diet effect from coaches that essentially are coming across as healthy human beings and looking amazing and whatever in their bikinis or swimwear, whatever you want to call it. But actually, the knock-on effect of what those crash diets can do over 6, 12 weeks can be horrific
Yeah,
in terms of a
it can.
person's
It can
diet in
really.
future.
It can play with your mental health, but also it can play with, particularly with women, with your hormonal health massively as well. So
Mm.
for me, that's to be avoided completely.
So if you've got a new intake of Synergy starting in February.
Yeah, so it's small group. I've only taken 25 ladies in, and I'm planning to only do 25 at a time, as that group intake, because then they can have a huge amount of my attention and a huge amount of my time. And group coaching, I like group coaching because everyone lifts everyone else up.
Mm.
And a lot of the time, you've got people that are going through, there's a lot of synergy in what people are going through in their lives. So when, oh yeah, I could do that, or actually, oh, that's a really good idea, or they tend to share resources. So yeah, the next intake will be in February. So if anybody listening to this, I need to get a waiting list up and going actually. But if anyone is interested in this, you can drop me a message on Instagram. I am that Pippa, or drop me an email, pippa@pippamatthews.com, and I'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. What an amazing episode this has been. Definitely different to the last time, but even more value. I'm absolutely confident of that. If you have enjoyed today's episode with Pippa and I, please go over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and drop a 5-star review. It goes a long, long way to helping the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, down below me here, like, subscribe. It just helps the algorithm, helps the 100% podcast out, and helps us out spread our message as well. Pippa, thank you very much for coming on. I'm sure we will have you back here again soon.
Thanks, Harry. Absolutely loved it.
Amazing. I'll see you here with a new episode every Friday. Take care.